I'm often baffled by much that I hear in the news. Take an incident that occurred in a little town, Walkertown, I believe, in Indiana. And it all centered around the Indiana's passage of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that became law, basically protecting people from any abuse for the practice of their religion. But apparently, this spread around throughout not only Indiana, but the rest of the country. When a reporter had surveyed some of the local restaurants and asked the question of this one pizzeria, would you cater a homosexual wedding? And I suspect that the manager heard the answer, just reacted honestly, said no.
And I learned from the workers here at this restaurant that they agree with Governor Pence and the signing of this bill. They say they have a right to believe in their religion and protect those ideals.
If a gay couple was to come in, like say they wanted us to provide them pizzas for a wedding, we would have to say no.
But when that story was reported, it spread to the social media, and before long there were threats on their lives and vile comments made, so much so that the pizzeria closed for some 4 days. Now, in reaction to that, there were others who supported them, and there was a collection made of some $800,000 for the pizzeria. I mean, talk about drawing lines in our country about those who are persecuted or those who presume they're persecuted by others. We have to make clear distinctions here in whatever persuasion we have, whether we choose to identify ourselves as homosexuals, heterosexuals, or people from Mars, I don't know. But the issue is basically this, that I know of no Christian persuasion in our country that persecutes people for being homosexual.
We're a Christian establishment.
They pride themselves in owning a business that reflects their religious beliefs.
We're not discriminating against anyone. It's just that's our belief. And everybody has the right to believe anything.
There are tenets, particularly in my faith as a Catholic, that completely disavow the persuasions of homosexuals, what they call their orientation.
That's a lifestyle that you choose. Why should I be beat over the head because they choose that lifestyle?
That we judge ourselves not by our appearance, but by our conduct and by our behavior. And generally speaking, so does our government. Our laws concerning civil relations with each other deal with our behavior, not our thoughts, not our religion. All of that is protected under the First Amendment, where we can gather together as members of one church. We can express our thoughts and our beliefs without fear of recrimination. And yet we have here, there are certain groups in our country who feel free to lambast and with vile comments and threats those who disagree with them. Now, the best way I can explain this is that there's a need in all of our lives to make a distinction between who we are and how other people see us in our actions. There's a distinction between the person and the person's behavior. I mean, for instance, if I were to meet Bonnie and Clyde, I'm sure that, the reports are they seem to be very nice people, and they were in love with each other, and I would say, well, good for you. But if they wanted to express their love, let's say, let's go and rob a bank together, I would say, that's a behavior I cannot approve of. I don't know if I would say that to their face if they had some of their weapons with them. But the fact is, our behavior is different from whom we are. We're potentially different people every time we choose to act one way or the other, and we need to make that distinction. Where does that arise from? It arises from our exercise of our minds and our wills. Now, I take issue with the whole matter of having a sexual orientation. Well, let me just say this. I think all of us, myself included, I have orientations to all kinds of things. Fortunately, I do not follow that orientation. I call them inclinations or temptations, and I attribute that to my forebears. I know there's a potential for good and evil in every person, including myself. And God help me, I try to resist those inclinations to what I consider ungodly or unchristian matters. Now, others may view their temptations and inclinations differently. I will not judge them on that. But when it comes to their requiring that I follow their persuasions, there we go beyond the pale. We know this is the great difficulty of the war that's occurring in the Mideast today. The Sharia law and the ISIS extremists. If you do not agree with their law, they can forthrightly just murder you. That is an invalid worship of God. No, God would never sanction the murder of his other children. And yet, many in this country would treat those who uphold traditional marriage, uphold marriage between a man and woman as enemies of themselves. And there's nothing in the Freedom Restoration Act that calls for that. There's the ordinary protection of law that you cannot injure another person because of their persuasion, sexually or otherwise. You may ask, well, where does this all come from? I think Jesus Christ gave great insight into this when he said, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And I know from my own experience, my body is always screaming out for certain things, before my mind can even catch up with its promptings. Perhaps to eat what I shouldn't eat, perhaps to undertake things that are really not helpful to myself or to others, or worst of all, to be angry or envious and express that with my relations with other people. My better self would tell me that is not a good thing to do. If you're truly a Christian, you would be meek and humble of heart as Jesus was. So we need to remember that these promptings we have, what we call inclinations, they may not be properly ordered. There may be something beyond them. And the fact is, our freedom is not absolute. There are restrictions in the exercise of our freedom because there are other people with their freedoms which we may butt up against. And the issue comes down to, where are my rights? My rights must always preserve the rights of other people. And I think that's what baffles me, where there are people who claim that they're free to do as they want and at the same time claim that others cannot. And I think we need to address this issue clearly in our land. And again, I know I'll be attacked for this, but I believe, as Christ taught, that marriage is only between a man and a woman, and that marriage is indissoluble. And as Christ himself said, that to divorce a woman and marry another is tantamount to adultery. Now, I know a lot of people may be in that basic situation, but even that, I will not judge them. They need to judge themselves and see how they align themselves with God's law. And for all those people who have these difficulties, I pray for them. I also pray for the innocent employees of that little pizzeria in Indiana who had to face down an angry crowd and a mob in front of their store. We need clearly, by our own Christian tenets, to tolerate and love all people, even those people who oppose us. I invite those who hold different tenets of their lifestyle to uphold the same tenet. Love those who oppose your behavior, because they too may love you for who you are and not for your behavior.